the world's great novels. The NBC University of the Air presents the second episode in its four-part dramatization of Thomas Hardy's penetrating study of human emotion, The Return of the Native, another in its series of books that live, the world's great novels.
The ageless wildness of Egdon Heath remains untouched by such paltry matters as the lives of the people who dwell there. And its very indifference is its terror for Eustacia Vine. Hating the primitive loneliness of her life, she has found distraction with Damon Wildeve, the young innkeeper, who has jilted his fiancée, Thomasin Yeobright. Knowing that Wildeve is unworthy of her, Eustacia looks forward with impatience to the return of Thomasin's cousin, Clym Yeobright, for he has come from Paris. Paris, to her, the very center of the world. In the days that followed Clym's arrival, Eustacia, half infatuated with a vision she had never seen, took long walks on the heath in the direction of Bloom's End. She watched and waited, but Clym did not appear. And she felt cheated and angry as, 2 evenings before Christmas, she talked with her grandfather's hired man.
What do you want, Charlie?
I've finished the chores, miss. Please, can we use the fuel house tonight to try over our parts for the mumming?
Are you one of the mummers for this year?
Yes, miss.
You may use the fuel house if you like. Have you got all your costumes and masks ready?
We'll have 'em by Monday night.
Is that your first outing?
Aye, miss, at Mrs. Yeobright's.
Mrs. Yeobright?
She's got up a bit of a party, being it's the first Christmas her son Clym's been home in a long time.
To be sure. Charlie,
Yes, miss?
what is the play you're doing?
St. George, miss.
Same as always. Charlie, do you remember the Maypole dance?
I do, miss.
You wanted to join hands with me and I wouldn't let you. Would you do something for me if I let you hold my hand for 15 minutes right now?
I do a good deal, miss.
Charlie, which is your part in the play?
On Christmas night, the big room at Mrs. Yeobright's was filled with guests from every hamlet on the heath. Eustacia, in her borrowed costume, the mask covering her face, played her part with the mummers, and then sat quietly in a corner, watching the man she had come to see. But presently, overcome by her emotions and fearful of detection, she slipped out of the house and stood alone in the winter moonlight. And in a little time, the door behind her opened, and Clym Yeobright stood beside her.
I've been watching you all evening.
Have you?
I think perhaps you're a woman, aren't you?
Yes.
Won't you take off your mask and let me see your face?
I'd rather not.
As you wish. This is very strange. I won't ask your reasons.
If you're waiting for an answer...
No. No, I shall see you again, perhaps. Good night.
Good night, Mr. Yeobright.
Filled with an unashamed happiness and excitement, Eustacia hurried toward home. But as she reached the wicket at Mistover, she remembered. It was the very evening she had fixed to give her answer to Wildeve, to tell him whether or not she would elope with him. She looked for a moment toward Rainbarrow, where she knew he must have waited, but she looked without concern. Meanwhile, Diggory Venn, the Reddleman, had not left the heath, though this was strange, since it was far from the sheep country. Eustacia could guess Venn's reason for staying, and now she was as anxious as he for Thomasin's marriage, so that when she found him next morning...
You'll be staying long in this neighborhood, Mr. Venn?
I have business here, miss.
Something about Thomas and Yeobright?
I saw Mr. Wildeve last night, miss.
Oh?
He stayed at Rainbarrow a long time, waiting for a lady who didn't come. He'll be there again tonight, I think.
He'll be disappointed again. To tell you the truth, that lady would be very glad to see Mr. Wildeve married to Thomason.
Indeed, miss?
I don't want to see him again.
If you care to send a note by me.
You're very kind. I suppose you're trying to help Thomason's marriage.
I'd sooner have married her myself. But if she wants him, she's got to have him.
Then we're of the same mind at last. You'll see Mr. Wildeve tonight.
I'll see, miss. You may depend on it.
Who are you talking to out there, Thomason?
It was...
Damon, Aunt.
Oh?
He wants to be married at once. The day after tomorrow.
What did you say?
I agreed. What else is there to do since Clem's letter?
Yes. Pity he has to go on a visit and find out from strangers that this Wildeve jilted you.
Clem's ashamed of me. I've got to put that right.
Well, let it be. It's in your own hands, poor girl.
I'm not pleading for Damon, Aunt. I know he isn't perfect. But this is what I've got to do.
Then the wedding will be on the very day Clem comes home?
Yes. Let it be all over before he comes. Then I can look him in the face.
Do you want me to give you away? It's the least I can do.
No. Better let there be no one there, Aunt. I'll go alone.
Thomason's being married while we're sitting here.
She wanted it that way, Clem.
But was it right? Suppose something happens again.
Then she'll come home again.
But I still don't think it's right. Her being married all alone like this. I almost hope he didn't meet her.
Come in. Oh, it's you, Reddle.
Yes, ma'am. I come to tell you that Thomason and Mr. Wildeve be married.
He didn't disappoint her then.
No, ma'am. He came up to the door punctual as a clock.
Who gave her away?
Miss Vi.
How remarkable. That's to be considered an honor, I suppose.
Who is Miss Vi?
Eustacia, Captain Vi's granddaughter of Mistle.
She's a proud girl from Budmouth, Clem. I don't like her much. What was she doing there?
Oh, just on a walk, ma'am. She went into the church and the parson beckoned her, being there was nobody else. But when it came to signing the book, she lifted up her veil and signed.
And what then?
Then I came away, for the thing was done. She's no more Thompson Yeobright. But God send her happiness.
Clem Yeobright was well known on the heath, having been a lad from whom great things were expected. And this being so, there was great curiosity as the days went by, and he showed no intention of going back to Paris. His mother wondered with the rest, and it was not long before her silence questioned him more loudly than words.
I'm not going back to Paris, Mother.
Not going back? But, Clem, your business,
I've given it up.
when you're doing so well,
Oh, I'll do better. But not in the way you mean.
you can do nothing here.
Oh, Mother. I hated the diamond business. I've got to do something useful before I die.
And what might that be?
I want to help these people. I want to teach them. I'm going to keep a school.
Keep a school. After all the trouble that was taken to get you started. Oh, these fancies will ruin you, Clem.
It's no fancy. Mother, the Heath is my home, and I love it. And I love the people.
We'll talk more about this. Wait until I see who's come. Why, it's Captain Vi's hired boy. Come inside.
I'll come a-borrowing, Mrs. Yeobright. Have you heard the news?
What news, Charlie?
Why, 'tis a most cruel thing. The women have been telling it about that Miss Eustacy's a witch.
And this very morning in church, one pricked her with a needle to get a drop of her blood and stop her witching.
Oh, how terrible.
Aye, it was a rum thing. And her so beautiful, too.
Beautiful?
Aye, the like as was never seen on the heath.
You see more in her than most of us, Charlie. I have never heard she was of any use to herself or anyone else. Good girls don't get treated as witches, even on exit.
Oh, nonsense. That proves nothing.
Please, ma'am, I've got to go along. I've come after a rope. The captain's bucket dropped into the bottom of the well, and all the chaps are there trying to get it out.
I might come along and lend a hand, Charlie.
'Twould be useful of you, sir.
Why must you go?
I'd like to see this Miss Vi.
She's not so well favored as Charlie thinks, Cliff.
Oh, no. No, Mother, for another reason. Charlie, do you think she'd like to teach children?
Oh, no, sir. Quite another sort, I'd say.
I would think so. I tell you, Kim, she's an idle girl.
Well, I can be of some help at any rate. Come on, Charlie. I'll help you find the rope.
Aye, that's got it. There's your bucket.
In good time. Here's Miss Vi coming to see how matters go.
Oh, you've done well, I see. Can we draw water tonight?
Oh, the bottom's clean out of the bucket, miss. We can do no more tonight.
No water? Well, thank you. I suppose you can all go in that case.
Aye, miss. Good night.
Good night, Miss Vi.
I can send you some water up from Bloom's End.
Oh, it won't be necessary.
But if you have none...
Well, there's the pond. My grandfather calls it water enough. One has to put up with things in a wilderness.
I heard of your accident in church this morning.
It was humiliating. It was the first I'd been to church in a long time. I'm not likely to go again soon.
I've come here to clean away such cobwebs. Would you like to help me?
How?
By teaching. We might help these people very much.
I'm not anxious to help them. I've no love for my fellow men. Not here.
You might like my scheme if you heard it.
I'd be glad to listen at any time.
You're very lonely here.
I can't endure the heat. It's too cruel.
Oh, can you say that? I'd rather live on these hills than anywhere else in the world.
There are also the boulevards of Paris.
Oh, I remember when I felt that way. 5 years in a great city is the cure for that.
Heaven send me such a cure. I'll say good night now, Mr. Yeobright, and thank you for everything.
In the weeks that followed, Clem rose early every morning and spent his days with his books in preparation for his new task. But his mother noticed, with disapproval, that he walked on the heath every night, and that his walks always took him on the path that led toward Mistover. The mother and son, who had been so close, found little to say to each other now, and Clem had no doubts as to the reason.
Mother, it's Eustacia, isn't it?
You're wasting your life here on her account.
You know that's not true.
She's lazy and dissatisfied.
She can help me in my work.
Now, don't think she has any money. She hasn't a father.
She's well educated. With a wife like her...
Clem! You aren't thinking of marrying her. Oh, I knew it was a bad day when you first set eyes on her. This business of the school is only an excuse with you now.
That's not true, Mother.
You tell me I'm lying when all I want to do is save you from sorrow? For shame, Clem.
All right, Mother, that's enough.
Where are you going?
There's an eclipse of the moon tonight. I'm going to see it.
You're going to that woman. That hussy.
I won't hear it, Mother. I'll say something and be sorry for it.
You can say what you like. I'm only trying
I said that's enough, Mother. Good night.
Clem.
Eustacia. My dear.
Has it seemed long since you saw me?
It seems sad.
And not long. That's because you are busy. I can do nothing.
We're here now. What else matters?
Oh, Clem, it won't always be like this. I'm so afraid.
You need not be.
You don't know. I'm older at this than you. I loved another man once. And now I love you.
Don't talk that way. I must have you always. I want you for my wife.
Oh, Clem.
Answer me. Shall it be not at once, but someday?
I must think. Tell me more about Paris, Clem.
Oh, I hate talking about Paris.
But, Clem, you'll go back again?
Never.
Clem, if you go back, I'll give you my promise. This minute, without waiting.
You and my mother. It's not the place I dislike, it's the occupation.
But you can go back and do something else.
But my work is here. Now, don't talk any more about that. Will you marry me?
Well,
Promise.
you will forget your plans for the school. I'm sure of that. So, I promise. Yes.
My darling.
You don't know what you've got in me. I'll never make a good homespun wife.
Oh, you're too mournful.
No. Only I hate to think of anything beyond this time. We're together now. But who knows?
Clem, I've been to see Thomason.
Yes, Mother?
Captain Vi has let it out at the inn that you and Eustacia Vi are engaged to be married.
We are. But it may not be for a long time yet.
I should hardly think it would be. You'll take her to Paris, I suppose.
I'm not going back to Paris.
What will you do with a wife then?
Keep a school near here, as I told you.
Dream. I might have believed in you if it hadn't been for this woman. If she'd been a good girl, it would have been bad enough.
She is a good girl.
So you think. Clem, if she makes you a good wife, there has never been a bad one.
I should be old enough to know what is best for me.
Best? You're setting your whole soul to please a woman.
You're being merciless, Mother.
Don't go setting it down as my fault. If you wanted to marry such a woman, you could have done it in Paris.
You're making me sorry I came home at all.
I only wish you would bestow your presence where you bestow your love.
I beg your pardon, Mother, for having thought this was my home. You may be sure I won't trouble you any longer.
Aunt, where are you?
Here in the garden, Thomason. How is Damon?
He is well.
Is he kind to you, Thomason?
Yes.
Honestly?
I'd tell you if he weren't. There's only one thing.
Yes.
It's only that I need a little money, and he doesn't give me any. Do you think I should mention it to him?
Of course. Have you never said anything about it?
I said something last week, but he doesn't seem to remember.
Well, make him remember. I have a box of guineas. Your uncle left it to me to divide between you and Clem. You can have your share at any time, you know.
I think I'd like it now.
You shall have it. But you shall speak to your husband first.
I will. Aunt, I have heard about Clem.
He's gone, Thomas.
Already?
We quarreled yesterday.
Oh.
He must have gone straight to her. Then he came home and packed his things.
What is he going to do?
They're to be married in 2 weeks. He's taken a little house on the heath.
Will she live so?
She's agreed, he says. He expects it to be only for 6 months, until he gets his school started. Oh, Thomason, why does he hate me, when I've lived only for him?
He doesn't hate you. It's only that he loves her too well.
He spoke as though I were trying to injure him.
There are worse women in the world than Eustacia Vi.
There are too many better. Clem must do as he will now. He's nothing more to me.
The wedding morning came, and Mrs. Yeobright, sitting alone in her house, felt old and forgotten. And she looked forward eagerly to the arrival of Thomason, who had promised to come to her. She was disturbed when, toward evening, Wildeve arrived instead.
Is Thomason not well? I was expecting her.
She was not able to come. Captain Vi came down last night and begged her to come to the wedding. She didn't want to be unpleasant.
So they are married.
I believe you have something to give Thomason. If so, I'll take it.
Did she tell you?
She mentioned having to fetch something or other.
Well, she can have it when she chooses to come.
What wonderful thing is it that I can't be trusted to take?
Nothing worth troubling you with.
One would think you doubted my honesty.
No such thing. Only there are some things which are better not done by certain people.
As you wish. I'm sure, Mrs. Yeobright. I wish you good evening.
Mrs. Yeobright had not liked to entrust the money to Wildeve, but she worried now that Thomason might need it before she could come to Bloom's End. Thomason was at Mistover, and it occurred to Mrs. Yeobright that by sending Clem his share of the money on his wedding night, she might show him that she bore him no ill will. It was then that she noticed Christian Cantle, one of the heathmen, loitering around her garden. She gave him the 2 bags of money, 50 guineas in each, charging him to go straight to Mistover and deliver them to Clem and Thomason.
Oh, I'm that glad I met you on the path, Mr. Wildeve.
You're going to Mistover, Christian?
Aye.
I'm on my way there to fetch my wife.
'Twill be black dark before we come there.
Are you afraid of something?
A man might be, with what I've got about me to give to Mrs. Wildeve.
Oh? What have you got?
Somewhat a man might wish were his own, I can tell you.
It's money, perhaps?
It's maybe.
Mrs. Yeobright sent you, did she?
Aye, and charged me to carry it straight to Mrs. Wildeve.
No doubt. Ah, how warm it is tonight, Christian. Let us sit down for a few minutes, for heaven's sake.
Oh, 'twill grow dark. We may lose the path.
I know it well. Besides, I have a lantern.
Oh. Well, then. Just good to rest. I would I had a tale to tell.
Oh, I have a tale. Do you know about the greatest gambler in England?
No, tell of him.
Why, one night he staked his last guinea and lost.
Oh.
Then he staked his watch and chain and lost.
Oh.
Staked his umbrella, his hat, his coat, his shirt. Lost them all. Then someone gave him a shilling, and he won with it. Won back his shirt, won back his coat, won back his hat, his umbrella, his watch, and his money.
Marvelous.
And went out the door a rich man.
Oh, it takes my breath. Oh, if only I had such luck as that. What have you there, Mr. Wildeve?
Only a pair of dice, Christian. Care to try a shilling?
Is it devil's work, do you think?
Nothing of the sort. You may have luck.
Well, I've only 1 shilling. But 'twill do no harm.
We'll play on this stone. Here, I'll open the lantern. That's my stake. Roll the dice, Christian.
Oh, I've won. I'll try the 2.
Good. Yours again. Let's try 4.
Yes.
Well, that's the luck of it, Christian. It's mine this time.
And now I have no more. And yet, I might get it back. Oh, I wish what's in my boots were mine.
You've got Mrs. Wilde's money in your boot.
Aye, for safety. 'Tis 100 guineas. Would it be any harm to play with it, do you think? Seeing man and wife are one?
None at all.
Well, here goes then. There's a guinea for ye. And may I not dream of it o' nights.
Wildeve began to play, thinking only to teach Mrs. Yeobright a lesson for her distrust of him. But as time passed and Christian lost 1 guinea after another, Wildeve forgot that he had begun the game as a practical joke. It was nearly 11 o'clock when the 100th guinea was laid on the stone.
That finishes it.
Oh, the last one, the last. Oh, what shall I do with my poor self?
Do live on just the same.
You've got money that isn't your own. Half the guineas are poor Mr. Clem.
How's that?
Because I had to give 50 of them to him, and Mrs. Yeobright said so.
Well, they're mine now.
Aye, they're yours. And what shall I do?
Get along home, Christian. 'Twill be all the same tomorrow.
Oh, heaven have mercy on my wicked soul.
Good night's work, Mr. Wildeve.
What's that? Who's there?
I'll sit right here where Christian sat, if you don't mind.
I thought you'd left Egdon, Redelman.
I'm back in good time, it seems.
You've been watching us tonight?
I have. Here's my sovereign. Down with your stake if you've pluck enough to go on.
Mine is a guinea.
Aye, a guinea that's not your own.
It is my own. It's my wife's. And what's hers is mine.
Then begin.
The game went one way, then another, the two men watching the stone as though it were a battlefield. But presently, Ben began to win continually, and 95 of the guineas had passed into his hands. Wild Eve was frantic.
League, take it. You've been tampering with the dice.
They're your own?
I'll show you.
What did you throw them away for? You don't want to go on?
Yes. I'll have another chance. I must.
But the dice?
I'll find them. Come and help me. Here. Here's one. We'll play with it.
Throw then.
We'll play the lowest point wins.
Agreed.
My last 5. Ace, it's turn for me.
Aye, and mine is another ace.
What the infernal? Give me that. Another ace. Match that if you can. The die. It's split in 2. No spot show.
You must have stepped on it. I've thrown nothing at all.
Take your money then, and curse you for ever coming back to the heath.
The Redelman went toward the highway and followed it till he reached the point where it joined the byroad for Mistover. Here he stood for nearly half an hour until a pair of lights came down the hill. It was Captain Vi's old-fashioned four-wheeler driven by Charlie. Thomason sat in it alone. Ben stepped forward.
I beg pardon for stopping you, Mrs. Wildeve. I have something to give you from Mrs. Yeobright.
In his anxiety to help Thomason, Ben had given her not only the 50 guineas which belonged to her, but also the 50 intended for Clem. He had not understood that halfway through the game, Wild Eve had begun to play with the money of another person. And his mistake was to cause greater misfortune than 3 times the loss of the money itself.
The Return of the Native by Thomas Hardy is one of the world's great novels, brought to you each week by the NBC University of the Air. Listen next week to the 3rd episode of Return of the Native. And remember that this and countless other great books are available in your local public library. Herbert Gorman's Handbook of the World's Great Novels is a valuable aid to enjoyment of these broadcasts. Just send 25 cents with your request to World's Great Novels, Post Office Box 30, Station J, New York 27, New York. That's Post Office Box 30, Station J, New York 27. The Return of the Native is adapted for radio by Clarence Ross. The music was composed by Emil Soderstrom, and the orchestra was directed by Bernard Bergquist. The entire production was under the direction of Homer Heck. David Garroway is the narrator. Eustacia is played by Nanette Sargent, Thomason by Doris Grundy, Mrs. Yeobright by Hope Summers, Damon Wild Eve by Everett Clark, Diggory Venn by Larry Alexander, Clem Yeobright by Sidney Breeze, Christian Cantle by Johnny Coons, and Charlie by Charles Mountain. This is John Conrad. This program comes to you from Chicago and is a presentation of the National Broadcasting Company and its affiliated independent stations. This is NBC, the National Broadcasting Company.